Okay, thanks for coming. And we're going to go ahead and get started while people start filtering in. So I'm Martin Mehalchin from Lenati, and this is the Shopping Inside a Mashup panel. And so I've just got a few slides to kind of tee up what that means and some of the themes that we're going to explore. So the first theme is physical stores becoming digital. So Burberry's got a lot of attention for this with their connected flagship in London, and Angela Ahrens actually used the word. She said they were blurring the lines between physical and digital, and now Apple, she was their CEO, and Apple's hired her to become head of their retail stores. The examples I have here are local Seattle examples. So the one on the left is Hointer, which is a jeans boutique where they have an app, and using that app is integral to the whole shopping experience. So you go in there, and instead of seeing piles of denim everywhere, there's just one pair of every style kind of hung almost like it's in a museum, and then you use your smartphone and their app to select the pairs of jeans you want to try on, to manage your shopping cart while you're in the store, and it eases checkout on the way out, and it also frees up staff time to be talking to you about the jeans instead of running in the back for different sizes or folding messy tables, things like that. Anybody here from Nordstrom? Looks like a couple. So the one on the right is Nordstrom Labs, and this is a group at Nordstrom that, the way I understand it, they work on technology that can complement the shopping experience in the stores or on the site. This particular example that they highlight on their own site was a tablet app, iPad app, where you try on sunglasses in a store, and you're trying them on and putting one on your face and then trying to remember that mentally as you put the next pair on. Well, this little tablet app helps you with that because it stores images, so you can look at 4 or 5 pictures of yourself and see how you look in the different sunglasses. So that's the first trend. Second trend we're going to explore is online merchants going brick and mortar. So this is kind of the reverse, right? Companies that born on the web, start out as e-commerce only. They're finding the need to have a physical space. So this example is Warby Parker, which is online eyeglass retailer. And if you look at what it says there, it says they're combining the snappy ease of online ordering with the fun and serendipity of real-life shopping. So they've decided that having a physical space is important to them. And then the third trend is retailers instrumenting physical space. So the thing I think of here is clickstream tracking on a website. That's always been a huge advantage for e-commerce vendors because they know exactly where you're going when you're on their site. Well, retailers are starting to do that with their stores as well, where they're using Wi-Fi tracking or video to figure out where consumers are going while they're in the store, how long they're spending in particular sections of the store. Another one, and this is one of the Panelist companies in the upper right there, Venuelabs can track social media interactions specific to a certain location. So they can tell a retailer your store in Mall X is trending more negative than your store in Mall Y. If you're interested in this space and more information on it, my company, Lenati, has a guide to the in-store analytics space that looks at some of the top vendors and some of the use cases. Come see me after the panel and I'll get you a copy. So with that, let's go to the panel. And I'm just going to ask the panelists to introduce themselves one by one. So we'll start with Andy.
All right. Good afternoon. My name is Andy Chu. I run our mobile for Sears Holdings. Sears Holdings incorporates a number of brands that you heard of: Sears, Kmart, Lands' End, Craftsman, Die Hard, and Kenmore. So I'm responsible for our mobile experiences and our business for mobile.
Hello, I'm Susan Livingston with Whole Foods Market. I serve as the Regional Marketing Director for the Pacific Northwest region, which is one of 12 global regions for the company. The company is based in Austin, Texas, and the Pacific Northwest region is here out of Bellevue, and we service markets in all of British Columbia, Washington, and Oregon.
Hi, I'm Todd Sherman. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Point Inside. We're over in Bellevue. We're a technology company that has a platform for helping retailers in their own branded apps to do in-store engagements with their shoppers. So we have the ability to know where a shopper is, exactly where a product is, and we can drop a pin on a map. We can track what the shopper is doing in the store, and then we have the ability to engage them through recommendations, through sponsored advertisements, which help drive sales inside of the store on behalf of that retailer.
Hi, I'm Neil Crist. I'm CEO of Venuelabs. We're a Seattle-based company focused on location-based analytics for retailers. Today we track about 500,000 locations for about 3,500 brands, and we're really focused on transforming all of the local, social, and mobile activity that consumers are having in store and turning that into insights that retailers can use.
All right, thanks everybody. So we've got a couple of startups that are doing really interesting technology in the retail space, and then a couple of retailers who would be the end customers for technologies like that. So Andy, I'll turn to you first. So with mobile, is it about trying to drive a lot of commerce on the mobile device, or is it more about how mobile integrates into the overall shopping experience?
Right. So I think that there are a number of ways, well, how we think about this. One of the things that we've been thinking about and talked about is internally is what we call integrated retail. How you start your purchasing behavior maybe online, on the phone, on tablet, and then eventually going to the store. So as we think about the entire puzzle, we don't really just think about the m-commerce portion, but it's actually how do we actually using mobile as a device, as a mechanism to better engage with our customers. That includes how we deal with our loyalty program. That includes how people are getting the coupons or targeted coupons. How they are, if you have items, merchandises ready to pick up, you're running our apps in the background, you're driving to the stores. We actually send you a notification when you're actually near a store asking you if you want that item to be delivered to your car. So it's that holistic experience and using mobile as a mechanism to enhance the pre- and post-shopping experience.
And then Susan, how does Whole Foods look at mobile and other technology adoption?
Well, I think we're a little behind Sears in terms of adoption. Again, our customers too are looking for that holistic experience with our brand. Mm-hmm. We tend to rely on social channels as our primary means for connecting with them as opposed to other versions of mobile, and certainly not mobile in store at this point.
Yep. Okay. Anything from you guys down on the end?
Yeah, it's interesting. We're in this definitional phase with mobile and retail, and there are a couple of things I'd like to point out. One is there's this sort of battle between what is mobile. Is it mobile smartphones or is it tablets? And generally speaking, tablets tend to fall in the category of PC replacements. And the math I always do is I'll think they're mobile devices as soon as I see a jogger running with an iPad up to their head. That notwithstanding, breaking those two things down is very helpful in terms of understanding the behaviors out there. And the second part of it is there's a term out called m-commerce, which was actually part of the original question. And generally speaking, traditional retailers tend to look at that as sort of an e-commerce experience, but on a smaller screen, on a smartphone. And the challenge there is it's measured, its metrics are basically on the number of conversions, the amount of money that's actually purchased on the phone itself. There was a study out last year by Deloitte, and what they were looking at was sort of the other uses of mobile. Specifically, what does it do to influence in-store behavior and drive in-store sales? And their numbers for 2014 came to something like $700 billion were going to be influenced by mobile devices that people use at some point along the shopping process. They don't execute the conversion on the device, but they actually buy from the point of sale, from the checkout counter. And that compares to the predictions for e-commerce, which are about $260 billion in the same year, 2014. So it's worthwhile taking a look at how mobile is affecting things that are happening in the physical world in addition to what they're doing with the e-commerce space.
I think one thing I'd add to that too is that, with 54% of consumers already using their mobile phone when they're in store, that's Nielsen, I think, reported that recently. We look at that a couple layers deeper and say, well, what do they do on the mobile phone? Well, consumers are, on average, looking at 8 different places to get recommendations and understand what they're looking at in the in-store experience. And then they're also engaging with the brand across 2 to 3 different channels on their mobile phone in store. So you combine all that together, and I think whether or not a retailer wants to embrace that, I think is the question, but I think consumers are already doing it, so how can you leverage it?
So, Todd, I'm going to turn to you to lead off on this next one. So, with mobile and social, retailers are gaining a tremendous amount of data about their consumers and about their operations, and you guys were just, citing some of that stuff in the aggregate in your answers, but a retailer can also have it specific to their own operation, but do they really have the capacity to absorb all the data that's coming from the technology they're using?
Well, there's a yes and no answer to that. The interesting thing, the transition that's happening is that they actually can collect the data. It's kind of a bad joke. Why do they collect the data? Because they can. And this is only going to increase as time goes on. They'll be able to see what people are doing across the spectrum, aggregate that information. So they'll have a lot of data points. The challenge comes in what they do with it. There are some large retailers, of course, if you look in the context of technology. Amazon is huge in terms of using this kind of information to help drive the shopping path, understand the customer in a couple different areas. The challenge comes for a lot of other retailers that aren't really at the size or have the technology back end to be able to take advantage of that information. And there are two kinds of uses for it. One is to help personalize for an individual shopper, meaning that you can put things in front of them that they're most interested in rather than having them wade through everything you might be putting on the table as a retailer. The other side is more the aggregation component, which is being able to understand what the trends are, how you can segment that data, what you can do with that data in terms of assortment or selection or inventory of particular physical stores, and then use that to help drive efficiencies into the system. The challenge really comes to how can those retailers use that data? How can they make use of it? And there are some ways to do it in terms of tools. For example, a recommendation engine would be one that can automate that process for you for particular shoppers on your site or particular shoppers in your store through in-store engagement. But the other components where it starts to become sort of the process of understanding the data, getting the aha moments, and then actually turning it into something that you can execute on is a much greater challenge. There are better and better tools coming out for anybody to use, and retailers can take part in that. Things like Tableau are kind of at the middle of the line there. But the real, I think, threat, challenge, opportunity comes in being able to look at all that data in a holistic manner, being able to break it down to understand what it means to your particular business, and then turning it into an executable plan, which is not something that a lot of retailers are equipped to do at this point, which means they'll probably have to go out of house to pick up services or some sort of consulting opportunity to do that. If they're not located in a technology center, it's going to be difficult to recruit people to work on that sort of thing internally. Aren't any real single answers for retailers out there, but the opportunity is there, and being able to take advantage of it is really one of the big things in the future that's going to, I believe, make a difference between very successful large retailers and less successful large retailers.
So, Andy, how's Sears attacking that?
So I think from a Sears perspective, Sears actually have started investing quite a bit in technology about 4 or 5 years ago. So if you look at our own personal recommendation engine, is actually all developed in-house. We started equipping all of our sales associates with iPads about 2.5 years ago, so we can do more recommendations selling, especially for categories in the home appliances categories. We'll also go as far as if you decide not to buy a certain appliance on the floor, the associate there's a button on the iPad, you can say, hey, marketplace items. We actually show all the marketplace items as well. So, but I do agree with Todd. I mean, knowing the data, we also invest very heavily in our loyalty program called Shop Your Way that started over 3 years ago. And now a very significant of all the $40 billion sales that are coming through are through the loyalty program, because it comes down to the set of data. But I do agree that, trying to retain talent, go figuring out how much is actually going to do in-house, was the information that's competitive that you necessarily need to have versus what other partners and vendors that we can go work with. Those are, day-to-day decisions that I have to make, other people have to make in the company to drive more efficiency.
So the theme of the conference is transparency, and of course, retailers having all this data, a lot of that data is about individuals, and some of the technologies like the Wi-Fi tracking and tracking people's paths through your store have been a little bit controversial and have been in the media. So, Neil, do you think consumers in general are kind of creeped out by technologies like this, and should they be worried about it?
Well, I don't think it's a question of whether or not they're creeped out by it. I think it's really about whether or not it maps to an expectation that they have. So, if you consider, when we talk about big data, there's a lot of data out there that is a result of opt-in, right? Consumers opting into something and they understand what's going on. So when it comes to ambient tracking of Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and those sort of things, that's the question is, do consumers expect that that's happening? And the expectation piece is big for a lot of the retailers we work with because they're trying to build loyalty and trust. So if you have a sense that consumers don't understand what's going on and there's an expectation gap, that could work against you.
So Susan, when Whole Foods is looking at issues versus, we can increase the engagement on one side, but there's a privacy issue on the other side, how do you look at those types of decisions?
Sure. Well, Whole Foods has a deep commitment to transparency in all parts of our model, and part of that is our commitment to our customers' privacy. We take it pretty darn seriously. We adopt the opt-in approach to things. We find that our customers expect us to respond to their needs as individuals, and we're able to do that in lots of different ways. But when it comes to loyalty programs and other tracking devices, we're a little shy.
Great. And go ahead.
I think part of it is it really comes down to also the customer experience as well. I mean, we're in 2013. You would think, hey, most people carrying around a smartphone, they're not going to worry about when an app pop up something, asks you for your location. That is a big deal. But we forgot about there's a big part of the middle of the country, and people do behave very differently. And we get actually a lot of complaints when the mobile web experience, when you first land there, you pop up and asking for location. We get people just writing essays complaining about some of these things. So we've gone through a big effort redesigning the entire site. And so the location is really in the context of your buy flow. So, there's a huge percent, 40%, over 40% to 50% of our sales buy online, pick up in store. So, in the context of, hey, you want to find this item, we told you that this item is available in the store near you, you click on the button, the location warning pops up. You most likely, you actually would say, yes, I would like to have you to have my location. So I think definitely it's about driving transparency, but I think it's also about providing a better user experience throughout.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We've seen that it's a value exchange at this point. The conversation about how much do retailers know about customers seems to have faded slightly, at least. I'm sure there are going to be some bumps in the road as the industry moves further and further into this kind of area. But if you can, as a retailer, deliver more to that customer in exchange for their personal data, they seem to be fairly well off with that. The other thing, and this is more, I'm sure we've all kind of had conversations around this, with the NSA exposure of being able to track a lot of things that are going on. Most of the conversations I've had with people in the industry, outside of the industry, various levels of technology know-how, is that there was basically an expectation that was happening anyhow, which I found very interesting. If this were 10 years ago and that announcement came out, I think that the outcry would have been very different than it is today. So there's been a moderation, an evolution of how people are viewing this data. And just sort of a quick show of hands, has anybody decided to go to the NSA to co-market their personalized data? Seems to me that would just take care of the complete deficit that we have in the budget. But
I have one more thing to add, and kind of off of what Andy was saying is the local aspect and sort of expectations as it maps to where you are in geography-wise. That's something we see a lot of as well, is consumer expectation is dramatically different in Seattle versus the Midwest and particular parts of the country. And so understanding those nuances also, I think, will help retailers understand what the opportunity is. But something we say quite often to retailers is, think big but start small, because of these sort of implications.
Right. Great. So for Andy and Susan, if there's somebody out in the audience who's building, the great new retail technology and they're hoping to join Neil and Todd in the startup space around retail technology, what should they be thinking about in terms of, getting companies like yours to adopt and to, be interested in what they have to offer?
I think one thing, obviously I get sales pitch quite often from mobile marketing, all kinds of retargeting, all the way to mobile payment, anything in between. I think there are a few things. One, I think you have to look at, don't look at I think back to what Neil was saying, don't look at like the Seattle to San Francisco and the New York audience. I think that's a great trend, but I think about more locally around what would mom and pop use. I think there are a lot of technologies out there, but oftentimes if we integrate it into our experience, people are just not going to use the service. So how do you make some of these things more tangible for someone that can adopt very easily? Two, I think there's a big aspect about attribution. I think like all the brands out there, we measure return on investments very closely. So you have to prove out your value proposition at the business model level, why I need to work with your technology versus 20 other companies doing similar thing, but in a very at a different way. And then third is have actually a big robust analytics engine that we can actually track and measure. I think those are three things top of mind.
Susan?
Sure. Yeah, to piggyback on a couple things that Andy shared, I think in the case of Whole Foods Market, our model is the first thing to be tracking on, and I would imagine for lots of companies. We're decentralized, so our entire model is set up to service the hyperlocal consumer down to the store level and the radius around the store, down to I'll give you an example of how that lives. We have more than 850 social channels with more than 1,000 content developers at local levels, feeding that cycle of interaction and engagement. So I think really attending to that as a priority, and also knowing our customer. Our customer's high touch. They love digital, but they are not necessarily looking for a high digital experience in store. They're high touch, they want to engage, they want to talk on social channels to tee up their experience in store, and we know this about them. So understanding that the moms and pops and the bells and whistles don't always resonate with our customers and don't necessarily drive sales. It's a lot more about delivering the things that they tell us they're asking for, that they want, that are priorities for them, and making it a really great user experience for them with every single step. And again, the measurement is really important to us because we are not super invested in sort of high ticket. We're not willing to, at this point, invest tons and tons of dollars into fancy tools. We're looking at the basics. We want to get up next to our customer and have human interaction. So when we do invest in digital wallet or click and collect or whatever it is, we need to be able to demonstrate that it's working. Some thoughts?
All right, great. So for Neil and Todd, kind of flip side of the same question, any secret sauce for you guys in terms of getting the meeting with that retail technology executive that might adopt your solution?
I think
don't let the secret out.
Yeah, exactly. I think the biggest thing is mapping it to. I talked about thinking big, starting small. The most important thing that we've learned is mapping the possibilities to existing programs and initiatives that companies have. Certainly every company should go through some exploratory phase of understanding what's there, what's possible. But unless you're, in fact, Andy and I were just talking about this a couple months ago. We were talking about customer sat by location, and he talked about NPS, Net Promoter Score, and how important that is, and how it fits into. It's already a program, it's already an initiative that they care about. How can that fit in? How can it be an augment? How can it be an additive layer? And so we try to really plug into existing initiatives like that, because that's where I think we gain some traction, and it really becomes valuable.
I would add just one more aspect to it. A lot of these programs are new, and hooking into existing programs is really one way to help jumpstart that. But the other component is being able to test and show the value of this in their particular environment in an easy way, meaning that it's not expensive, it's not heavy on their IT or other personnel resources, it doesn't interfere with other projects that they have going on. If you can master those kinds of concepts, then the chances of success at the end of that funnel are going to be much higher for you.
So Todd, sticking with you, I know you used to work at Amazon. How much of what we're seeing in terms of, the retail technology rush and retailers implementing and doing all sorts of different pilots, how much of that is around a, a perceived need or actual need to compete with Amazon?
Well, just disclosure, I still own some Amazon stock, so there's no chance competing with Amazon at this point. Amazon has done a phenomenal job, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, of being able to handle online everything from what they do with the customer up front to everything they do in the back end in terms of fulfillment and everything in between. Just a phenomenal culture of, and this word gets used a lot with them, being relentless about continual improvement on what they're doing. They had the benefit of growing up in the internet, the big data, high technology world, and they've really been able to ingrain that into their DNA along with some incredible leadership. The opportunity for other retailers, though, is huge. When I mentioned the numbers earlier, most retail, over 92%, depending on who you talk to, is still done in stores. And at this point, having a physical presence is an asset that can be leveraged by retailers. Combining that with the start from the customer perspective, what the customer wants to do and what you can do with that physical store in terms of a customer experience is really the way to think about it. That doesn't give a whole lot of 1, 2, 3 step directions on how to compete with them. But taking a page or two out of the Amazon book in terms of what is happening with technology, what is happening with how people are shopping, smartphones, online, and then bringing that to bear in the physical store is really the way to look at it. I think going toe-to-toe with Amazon is not always a fool's errand, but it very often puts you in a position, or puts a retailer in a position where they don't have the assets, they don't have the leverage, they don't have the tools that Amazon has to really compete effectively, even if it's just for a short term to create a problem. And they've definitely got the long view in mind when they do that sort of thing. So connecting the physical store with new technologies and new attitudes is really the way, and the customer, and take it from the customer's perspective, what they want to do, is really the way to look at how to compete with Amazon.
Andy, I know you've got some thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I agree. Everything what Todd said. I'm not sure about the whole Amazon thing, but focusing on customer is definitely correct. But and that's the whole notion, the whole concept of integrated retail. It is about understanding customer, understanding their buying behavior, their likes and not likes, and then think outside of the purchasing funnel. How do we engage them online and offline? How do we do better targeted emails? No longer we're actually doing human curating these email anymore, using the machine curating hundreds and thousands of variations of these emails. How do we provide a better recommendation? I think there are certain things we can definitely borrow from Amazon because they have done it so well over the last couple of years. And I think there are other things that in terms of bridging the customer at the physical presence in the store, how do you engage as a retailer? How do you engage with these consumers? I think that's where sort of the competitive advantage that a lot of retailers, brick and mortars, has.
So Susan, Amazon's getting into grocery with Amazon Fresh. Are services like that going to change consumers' expectations about what the grocery experience should look like and how much convenience there should be?
Sure, it will. We know that our crossover shopper is certainly going to take advantage of the Amazon offering, and they're doing a great job in lots of ways. Like I said before, our customer really values that high-touch experience. They want to engage. They want to talk to real human beings. They want to touch and smell and listen and use all the senses to engage the whole store. So we know that our customer engages a lot in e-store with holiday. We do lots and lots of holiday, starting with Canadian Thanksgiving. in October, and we do also lots of online with catering and party, business lunches, that kind of stuff. But for the most part, our consumer uses the online stuff before they come into store, and they use it afterward to validate and verify. I'm not seeing, I don't know, we appreciate Amazon very much, and they're doing great business. They're great customers for us, especially at South Lake Union. And we're excited to see how it works for them.
Great. Neil, anything else on that?
Well, I think the one thing I would say is that one of the things that Susan touched on a couple questions ago was about local. And I think when you think about how consumers think about Whole Foods, I think about the Whole Foods that's near our house. I don't think about Whole Foods, the brand. And so I think that's an opportunity, to build on.
So one of the things that's a big buzzword in retail is the omni-channel consumer, and the notion that if someone shops you on more than one platform, they're going to be a better customer for you and all of that. And there's some controversy around that some people think those consumers don't exist, and other people are a big proponent of it. So, Andy, what is Sears seeing in terms of someone who's engaging with you in multiple platforms, a better customer for you?
Oh, definitely. So I think I mentioned we have a loyalty program called the Shop Your Way Rewards program. It's been around for a few years, and majority of our sales now are actually through members, what we call members. So we have a single source of truth, if you will, of a customer, of the profile. We understand who these customers are, and definitely, we call it integrated retail. I know the buzzword now is omni-channel. But from an omni-channel perspective, we definitely see if someone engaged with us online, on the PC, on mobile, they're definitely a lot more engaged with us. So I think the other interesting thing is because we understand this customer, so for example, you go to the mobile site or even the PC site, you look at your order centers. And if you bought stuff online from Sears or Kmart or other properties that we owned, we can actually show you both the online purchases as well as the offline purchases, all in there in your order history. So, that's just really to the crux of everything that we do, is how do we look at this customer, be it they are dealing with us in the physical world or they are dealing with us in the virtual world. So.
Okay. Susan, or you guys with your clients, what are you seeing in terms of that?
Yeah, it's buzzword bingo here with omni-channel. Who here has omni-channel in their title? Really? This is a unique audience. So you don't have to change it next year when the new buzzword comes out, which is all good news for you guys. It's really, there was a multi-channel concept, which was you need to connect with your shoppers in different areas. Now omni-channel has kind of taken over that. Very similar in context, but I think one of the things in the last couple of years that has come forward is people don't necessarily start and stop on one channel when they're making even a single purchase. And jumping between the 3 different screens, tablet, PC, and then a smartphone, the expectation from the consumer side, which I think is, again, where retailers ought to really focus their attention, is that they want to have a consistent experience. And by consistent, it means that their relationship with the retailer is consistent. It doesn't necessarily mean that they get the same features. What they do at home on a laptop in a browser is a very different set of things that they want to accomplish versus what they want to have happen in the physical store. So it's a matter of combining that customer-centric view with the different sets of features that they may want to take advantage of under those different situations.
I do think, similar to what Todd talked about, is the expectation piece. As a consumer insights platform for over 500,000 storefronts, we've looked at a lot of, we see the trends in sentiment, and today we still see quite a few experiences where consumers are complaining or reflecting an experience in store where they expected to be able to return something that they bought online. Right? And consumers shouldn't have to worry about or understand the reasons why that doesn't work. And so, I'm surprised even with some large retailers that still exists, but we still see it quite a bit. So it's something that I think, in my mind, points to the fact that consumers expect it. They expect that the relationship with Whole Foods, regardless of the screen, is going to be consistent and sort of interchangeable.
Yeah, I'll piggyback onto that. Absolutely. Our Whole Foods Market brand is fairly complex, just in terms of we're not super soundbite friendly. Our whole sourcing model is pretty complicated, and it's very detailed. And we know that our customers really rely on multiple channels and multiple touch points to have their wants and their wishes reaffirmed. They need to feel that lots of places. They need to have lots of different sources of information. In fact, we don't even invest in traditional media. You won't see us on TV. What you will see, though, is a very, very careful recruiting process, and our hiring process is very, very intentional. And we invest a ton of time and resources into training every team member on the floor about all that stuff. And it's highly integrated. And the goal being that when Neil pops into Whole Foods Redmond, that he has a great experience, but if he happens to be down here, paddling a kayak on Lake Union, that he'll have a similar experience at South Lake Union. And the same thing happening in the digital channels, and especially in social. That hyper-local social and that service model, which can really bog some folks down, especially on Twitter, we don't experience that because it's really set up to service, not only customer service complaints and challenges, but questions and inquiries, and to constantly be that resource. So it's really hyper-local and hyper-individual focused.
So, Todd, you wrote an article recently about beacon technology and using that for shopper engagement. You want to kind of share with the audience what that technology does and your thoughts about it?
Sure. I'm guessing that people have heard of beacons in a general sense at this point. They basically, just a quick description of them and then sort of some thoughts. They're based on Bluetooth Low Energy, BLE technology, so they can send out messages to your smartphone, whatever device you have that has Bluetooth on it, and exchange information with it. So you can do things like deliver particular product recommendations or promotions or any sort of ad through that mechanism. What's very interesting about these, though, is that they're very inexpensive. And back to sort of how to get into a retailer, the fact that Estimote as a company is selling 3 of these for $100 means that a lot of retailers can sort of pick these things up off the shelf, literally, and put them on the shelf and start to engage with their customers to do all sorts of tests and trials. In the technology, it can determine whether you're within 10 feet or 30 feet or 50 feet and deliver different messages to you depending on that. It also becomes a way to at least do some coarse-grained shopper location in the store to understand where they are in the store and then to connect them with the products that are very close to them. To me, it seems like it's going to be a potential for a big revolution in 2014 as these start to populate within retail physical stores, and then being able to connect the shopper with the actual store itself while they're in there and start, if not a conversation, then at least start to deliver messages or even personalized messages to those customers, which I think is one of those harbingers of being able to really do something with smartphones in your store on behalf of the retailer, where the price is being lowered, the cost of entry is being lowered, and you can start to figure out what works and what doesn't work for your particular brand.
So, Andy, is that going to be a big thing in 2014? Do you agree with Todd?
It's going to be a thing in 2014, for sure. I think you will see a lot of things coming up in this area in 2014. So that I definitely agree. If you look at it, there are all kinds of, like Todd and I were just talking about this, there are all kinds of, besides the beacon, if you trace back the trend, it started with Wi-Fi, cellular triangulation, and now with your devices, you have your accelerometer and a number of other sensors on your phone, plus the beacon. There are companies out there doing EMF, electromagnetic field, Wi-Fi from light bulbs. So, I mean, there are all kinds of new and interesting things are coming. Even though at the price point of $20, $30 a pop, still quite expensive. If you look at, it depends on in the store format. If you like more of a smaller boutique store, I think it's probably pretty affordable. But if you look at the size of a typical Sears store, have 3 or 4 stories, and the square footage and where you strategically position these things, that still can get pretty pricey, and multiply it by 2,000. So I think that's where it sort of gets interesting. So I think you see a lot of experimentation. I can't talk about what we're doing, but there are a lot of experimentation that you will see a lot of big box retailers would be doing in this area. How to, using technology to enhance that buying experience.
Anybody else with thoughts on that?
All right. I was in Austin about 2 weeks ago, and I shared with these guys that we had somebody come and talk about beacons and all kinds of. What was that called? An excelometer? What did you call that? It's like a flux capacitor, right?
That would be awesome. Put it on the phone.
That'd be awesome. I sat in a room with all the senior marketers for the whole company, from around the world, and we had this guy pitch us on this whole thing, and we all sat there so frustrated because from a service standpoint, it's a tremendous gift to be able to know who's where and what they might need from us based on previous behavior. But from the privacy standpoint, boy, we just all shook our heads and had a beer because we just can't go there. We're not going to go there. And one thing I'll share too is that as we scale, that's the thing I should have mentioned earlier when we talked about how companies can engage with a company like Whole Foods Market. We're currently at 365 stores. We're going to 1,000 globally in the next 5 years. So growing like crazy, and so a lot of our infrastructure is devoted to managing that growth and maintaining standards and customer experience. And technology is a little overwhelming. It could be overwhelming, and I think a simple approach when dealing with us would be really helpful.
Great, thanks. So I'm going to turn it over to questions from the audience now. So there's a microphone in the center aisle there, if you can use that.
This is for Whole Foods. So what if your customers want you to know where they are in the store? I mean, would you start to have 2 tiers of privacy?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I doubt it. I think that there will, in-store, to be really straight, it feels a little big brother to our company. I think if they're going to be at a store and they want to turn on something to let us know they're going to be approaching, I would imagine there'll be some sort of tiered service level around that. But it does make us itchy. It really does.
Todd or anybody else thoughts on kind of attacking that problem, and does a 2-tiered approach make sense? Or?
I think it does. I think it goes back to the opt-in component of it. And if people are seeing a benefit to delivering, in this case, information on where they are in the store, I think they'll take advantage of that. I think the personalization component is huge, and I think there are a lot of ways to get there at this point to where you're not throwing random information at shoppers. I mean, one of the areas of location-based advertising where it knows where you are through the GPS signal and different variations on that you're at the corner of 5th and Main, let's say, and an ad comes at you. That has always struck me as being sort of the carnival barker on the side of the road trying to get you to come into their store. It needs to be much more personalized than that. And I think if you're talking about a retailer who has an app that can then integrate your own personal preferences with the messages that are coming at you, I think that starts to look much more like a better customer experience than a privacy issue.
Fair enough.
More questions from the audience?
When we take for granted that we have smartphones day to day, everybody has them around us. When expanding into developing nations, and even cultures domestically, like my father doesn't even have a dumb phone. Are there strategies based on these where we can't track them already, but we are potentially missing a customer base?
Who wants to take that one?
I'll take it. We have, my parents live in Bellevue and they don't have smartphones, so there's a start. We know that...
That's Seattle calling Bellevue a
Yeah.
developing area.
I can tell you that we have a really international customer base, particularly in Vancouver. It's highly international. And we are learning to connect with different cultures, and both here in our region locally and as we expand globally, that will be a focus for us. Also language barriers, those kinds of things. So I think the multi-channel piece. Again, omni-channel is certainly important in terms of engaging those folks in different places. We find radio performs really well for us in cross-cultural, and just the good old store experience and word of mouth is still really powerful for us, particularly with diverse cultures.
Yeah, so I agree with that. If you look at like the Sears segment, is actually very interesting because with Sears, it's actually very mixed. Because if you look at the home appliances, you have the high end all the way down to the low end income level, and then for Kmart, is majority is lower income. So the way how we engage with that segment of consumer is actually very different. Even though, like here in the U.S. is a little bit different because of the Android penetration, lower end Android devices are actually creeping up very, very fast. And then now with T-Mobile effectively dropping their prices to everything for the iPhone, we are seeing a very tremendous growth in terms of smartphone penetration. So from a mobile standpoint, we're still optimizing our experiences specifically for the smartphones. But then we still use our existing channel, social channels and other channels to reach these customers, targeting, like in the case of the Hispanic population, we have like specific Hispanic content that we go after as well. So I guess depends on kind of where you are in the world. In the case of like China, I mean, there are more smartphones in China than here. So definitely seeing a huge growth there. So.
All right. Looks like we've got another question.
Hi. So my question is, how do you get people to engage physically? I mean, to me, an app is actually a layer between the customer and what they're seeing physically. So what kind of technologies do you see is it, smart devices on shelves? Is it augmented reality? I mean, what's coming up that isn't app-oriented and distracting in my point of view? How do you get people to engage physically?
Yeah, I mean, there are different ways to do that. So a lot of retail, I think Whole Foods does it as well, like digital signage. So, I mean, you can go into the store because of one of the things that, oftentimes we talk about, the demise of Best Buy, but actually is because they are showrooming. I'm surprised that no one has actually brought up showrooming throughout the last 50 minutes. Because with the Amazon effect, everyone talk about the brick and mortars effectively become a showroom for Amazon. So that's the term showrooming. So if you look at a lot of the stores now, we actually changed to a digital signage. And for the prices, these prices changes dynamically. So just like how it's being reflected online as well. So I mean, there's one aspect. There's the other aspects of there are different digital signs. So historically, you can go into a store, they're all paper signs. Right? So how do you actually transform that into more of a digital signage? And then you add on additional technology that you can interact with a customer. It sounds like more Minority Report-ish, but we're not quite there yet. But at least you can just walk up and saying, hey, what are different deals? Because a lot of stores, if you go to a Sears or Target, whatever, right? You still see local ads kind of published as you go into the door. What if you go in there and you can just quickly glimpse the stuff that you need, but not like 50, 100 items from the local ads, but actually the 20 items that we know that we think you might care more about. So those are interactions that really go beyond the smartphones, but it's actually technology that we can put actually in the store and interact with the human being.
Yeah. So sort of along the lines of the technology, Lowe's recently came out with their upgraded app, and it has the ability, if you put in a search term for a product, it'll actually drop a pin on a map of the store to let you know where that product is within a couple of feet. So that's an example of connecting what is digital in your smartphone with what is physical in the store. And then back to something like beacons or Wi-Fi or any of the other sort of shopper location technologies, by understanding where you are in the store, it can begin to understand what you're more interested in. And you can couple that with other information such as a shopping list to know what kind of a buyer you are and what you'd be more open to. But you hit the nail on the head there. It's really about connecting the digital with the physical for an in-store experience to happen. And the contrary view of that is having an app that has a classic or traditional e-commerce kind of aspect to it, which when somebody's in your store, you've already got them in the store as a retailer. You've worked hard to get them there through all different means. You've paid monies in different ways to get them there. If they open up an app and they're going to be in an e-commerce situation where they put it into a cart and then it gets shipped to their house in 3 or 4 days, you've basically moved them to be within 1 click of going online with anybody else, and you've nullified what's happening in the store. So it's really a key aspect of design to have both the e-commerce, so if they're not in the store, they can take advantage of it on their smartphone, and then when they're in store, flip it over into something that's oftentimes called store mode that actually connects them with the physical store that they're in.
Yeah, and besides on the phone, I think I mentioned about the tablet. So one of the things that we started investing in, especially for things that are big ticket items, right? You spend a few $1,000s on a home appliance, and if you go into a store, typically, for me, many years ago, when you go into a Sears store, the sales associate is carrying around this blue book, and all it does is basically has a bunch of specification of all the different appliances. Now, basically, not only digitizing it, but there's like beautiful images and everything else around it. So now, when a person is there talking to a sales associate, not only he or she is actually feeling the product and looking at it, asking the question, but the sales associate can actually bring up the tablet, and you can interact with it. And then, like I said before, if you decided you don't want to buy, you go home, we actually send you a sales recap of everything that we talked about. So, and then at that point, you can decide if you want to buy it online, sitting on, at home, or you can go back to the store, or you can call the store and actually purchase that item. So I think that's how we think about, when we talk about like omni-channel, integrated retail, or multi-channel, or whatever buzzwords, and using technologies. I think back to my first recommendation is looking at what are the pain points. If you're a startup out there, you have to look at the pain points of a customer, of the value chain. What technologies can you actually solve? There are always science projects out there, but the question is, science project is not, for us, 2,000 store, Whole Foods going into 1,000 stores, us is about scale. How do you serve millions of people very, very quickly? And I think that those are the things that we are looking for.
Susan, go ahead.
Yeah, just quickly, one of our most successful tools has been our recipe app. And it is an app, but we find it super helpful in driving conversations at the store level. And that people then come in, it's often the featured recipes in the app are things that are tied to our promotions schedule. So you come in, and it's also driven by the e-blasts, and it's supported with digital signage on scales and at register. But the idea being that it is a digital tool and it is an app, but it really drives conversation at the store level, and then they take that store level experience back home and prop their iPad up on the counter and start making stuff. So it is a bit of an integration, and it's so simple, but our customers tell us they love it.
So on that, so for your associates, is there a concerted effort to make sure that they know, the recipes that are in that app so they can answer questions, or know what the store's been doing on social that week so they can respond to it if a customer says something in the store?
Absolutely, yeah. Our social schedule is set up differently in each metro. We're trying some different things. So some of them each store has its own accounts and pages, and some of them are combined into a metro voice. But it is actually driven through people. Our team members' base is informed and educated on a daily basis about what's fresh, what's being pushed out through the different channels, and what our customers are going to be asking about. Everything from public policy issues to what recipe's hot to which fish has come in the night before.
So we got another question out here.
Yeah, an easy one. Similar to the beginning of the program, I would appreciate if you could share some of your favorite, e-commerce retail mashups. Just good examples from each of you. Things we should go home and try out or look up after the day ends.
I'd recommend going try the Lowe's app that I mentioned. That's Todd from Point Inside.
Neil, anything coming to mind?
I'll think of something.
All right. Well, I can throw out a couple there. So Tesco in the UK, and also in Asia, they've done some really interesting things with virtual storefronts in subway stations or airports. So you can just, scan the product on your commute home or as you're coming home from that vacation, and then drive by the store and pick up the milk so you don't come home to an empty fridge like most of us do after a long vacation. That's one out there. Burberry's, like I mentioned in the beginning, has done a lot of interesting things. So they're one to continue to watch, including they use a lot of RFID in their stores. So if someone's doing buzzword bingo, I just added another one. Any other
Well,
favorites?
for us, of course, Sears and Kmart app right now. Some of them you have to actually make a purchase for you to actually live through the experience. Like I said before, we buy online, pick up in store, 40%, 50%. So within 20 minutes, you should get an email. And then when you drive to the store, it's a 5-minute guarantee that you get the item once you checked in. So those are the things that we're doing. So other, let me think for a couple more minutes.
All right, we got another question.
Are any of you experimenting with augmented reality inside the store using smartphones?
Yeah, we've tried it a number of things. So the whole Tesco scenario, we actually, I think last Christmas, there's a huge billboard, like toys and stuff like that. You can scan. This is one specific around QR codes. There's a continuous debate around the effectiveness of QR code, so I'm not going to start here. But we did not see the return that we think we expected. But yeah, there are different augmented reality stuff. Those I think falls into the category of continuing experimentation. I don't think all the combination of what's out there to date has done really a good job. And a lot of it has to do with the lack of integration directly into the device. I mean, I've been mobile for a while, so the general rule of thumb back in the days is, every time you ask the customer to click on a button, you're going to lose 50% of the audience. So, like a lot of these augmented reality and some of these things, you are asking people to, one, understand what that is. I mean, if you go to the middle of the country, you ask people what augmented reality is, they're going to look at you in sideways, right? So how do you dumb down, if you will, these technologies so people can take out their phone, flip it, and then actually interact with it? I don't think we're quite there yet.
Todd or Neil, are you seeing any interest in AR from retailers you talked to?
I agree with what Andy said. If it's something that a user has to take an extra step on, and I'll throw the QR codes into that as well, it really diminishes the interaction or the effectiveness of something like that. In augmented reality, I think it's got great potential. Combine that with Google Glasses and trying to find products in the store, I think you can see in a sci-fi kind of way or a Minority Report, again back to the second mention of that here, but that has to happen in these sort of panels, is you can see how that would come to fruition and be very helpful to help people find things in the store. And I have no doubt that it will get there. It's tough to see it in the short run in a use like that, though.
We don't.
Time. Go ahead, Neil.
One more thing.
Yep.
I haven't seen any, across our retailers, anyone using AR yet. But the one thing that I think, going off of what Susan talked about earlier, is what we are seeing is using technology to enhance and actually connect you with the sales associate. Those are the really interesting things, because for Whole Foods and for others, that sales associate experience is what differentiates the brand.
So last question.
Okay, on the theme of transparency, some of the things you talk about, casinos have been doing for a long time, tracking where people go. So my question is, at what point do you have to have a sign on the door warning people, this is what we do and this is how we do it, the way that you see with cookies now?
Well, when you use, like in our case, when you actually download our app, we actually have two separate EULAs that you actually have to click through. One is just a regular EULA. The other one is very specific around privacy EULA. So I think we do go above and beyond to basically tell the consumer, hey, there are information that we are collecting. And I would say, looking at all the other retailers out there, how their privacy policy, we're definitely up there in terms of the hurdles we're asking the customer to go through. So in store stuff, we're still looking at exactly how best to inform the customer, because a lot of the scenario is about someone using their device. And so since you have accepted the EULA, so it's sort of as part of that. So I don't know if I answer your question or not. But.
Susan, you want to have the final word on that?
From our perspective, same kind of thing. Once they opt in, they opt in. In terms of the beacon kind of stuff, I think the minute we have anything like that in play, we would be notifying our customers either at the retail space or online. It's how we work, how we roll.
The only other thing I'd add is that what I've seen retailers doing is instead of, posting some sort of, at the door as you walk in, some sort of awareness, they're actually talking about or advertising the benefit. So what is the beneficial service that you now can experience as you walk in the door versus something more ominous?
Yeah, I totally support that. It would be all about giving our customers what they're asking for, and they would opt into that opportunity.
Great. Well, great questions from everyone, and thanks for coming. Appreciate it.